The morning, I discovered that glaring neon yellow violation sticker plastered across my front door was the very same morning. 5. HOA board members in Pine Valley Estates each found federal subpoenas tucked into their mailboxes. But I'm jumping the gun. Let me back up and start where it actually began. It all started the day I moved into this so-called tranquil suburb and first shook hands with Sandra Kellerman, the HOA president, who was about to discover that cutting off a cybersecurity contractor's internet access ranks among the dumbest moves a person can make. My name is Nathan Brooks. I work remotely as a consultant for a handful of three-letter agencies that strongly prefer to stay out of the spotlight. When I closed on the house at 47 Maple Grove Lane, I picked it for three very specific reasons. 1. It had a spare bedroom I could convert into a proper office. 2. The backyard was big enough to accommodate my satellite gear without bothering anyone. 3. The prior owner had already poured a concrete slab in the perfect spot for my diesel backup generator. What I failed to factor in was Sandra Kellerman's pathological need to micromanage every blade of grass, every mailbox, flag, and apparently every byte of data that crossed her kingdom's borders. Sandra was the type who wore starched blazers to weekend flea markets. She kept a metal tape measure in her purse so she could personally verify whether your lawn had crept past the covenant-mandated 2.5-inch maximum. Section 12B if you're taking notes. She once slapped a $200 fine on my next-door neighbor because his ceramic frog was angled toward the house instead of the street. Dead serious. According to her reading of the architectural guidelines, all lawn ornaments were required to face outward or extend a courteous greeting to guests. My own problems kicked off roughly 3 weeks after move-in day. I had just finished setting up my private Ka-band satellite terminal, an absolute requirement for the encrypted tunnels my contracts demand. The dish set on a 10-foot mast in the far corner of the yard, painted haze gray, completely shielded from the street by a row of Leyland cypresses. From any public vantage point, it was invisible, yet somehow Sandra sniffed it out. Maybe the installer's van tipped her off. Or maybe she spotted the tiny rim of the reflector from her upstairs bird-watching perch, complete with 1050 binoculars everyone knew were trained on driveways, not cardinals. The first citation showed up on a Tuesday, printed on heavy cream stock with the Pine Valley Estates crest, signed in Sandra's looping violet flourish. It cited Violation 9, unauthorized telecommunications infrastructure detrimental to community aesthetics, and carried a $50 penalty payable in 7 days. I tossed it in a drawer, figuring sanity would eventually prevail. Rookie mistake. Never underestimate a bored tyrant with a color-coded binder and a vendetta. 7 days late, the second notice arrived. Fine now, $100 for ongoing willful noncompliance, plus a brand new infraction. Excessive RF emissions during designated electronic quiet hours. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. a rule I swear no one had ever heard of until that moment. According to Sandra, my uplink was bathing the cul-de-sac in disruptive energy waves. I wrote back politely, professionally attaching the relevant section of the FCC's ordered Rule 47 CFR 1.4 that expressly prohibits HOAs from banning dishes under 1 meter, plus a couple of bonus court decisions for flavor. I genuinely thought that would end it. Instead, Sandra escalated to a personal appearance. Saturday morning, 8:03 a.m. There she stood on my porch in a Navy power suit and an HOA president badge the size of a sheriff's star, flanked by 2 silent board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Hair scraped back so tight her eyebrows had surrendered halfway up her forehead, clipboard raised like a riot shield. In a voice calibrated to reach the mailboxes across the street, she declared my satellite a clear and present danger to community network security. She claimed multiple residents had reported interference with baby monitors and garage door openers, and that my dish was hoovering up signals from hostile foreign actors. When I asked for names, she invoked confidentiality. When I asked for written complaints, she said they were verbal. When I asked for last month's meeting minutes, she said the secretary was behind on transcription. She was improvising at Olympic levels. but delivering each fabrication with the serene certainty of a woman who had never once been told no. After that, the rumor mill went into overdrive. At the neighborhood prude pool, she whispered that I was running a dark web streaming empire. To the widow Hender, son, she confided loudly that she'd personally logged K-band anomalies consistent with known Russian transponders along my property line. The woman had binged one too many Cold War reboots and now fancied herself Pine Valley's last line of defense. Then came the morning she decided to conduct her own warrantless search. I was on a classified VTC when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. Live feed. Sandra Kellerman in a pencil skirt and nude pumps attempting to scale my 6-foot cedar fence. Yorkshire Terrier princess poking out of her Louis Vuitton carrier like a furry periscope. She made it 2 rungs up the lattice before gravity and fashion conspired against her. She windmilled backward into my hydrangeas with a shriek that probably registered on seismographs. I saved the 4000 clip in 3 separate cloud locations. In Mibuseness, you keep receipts. Most people would have retreated to lick their wounds and maybe reconsider their life choices. Sandra doubled down. Her masterpiece was a 9-page letter CCD to the FCC, the State Attorney General, and a Bureau of Electromagnetic Compliance that exists only in her imagination, accusing me of operating an unregistered intelligence collection platform that threatened the entire region's spectrum integrity. She demanded Peak Communications, our HOA's anointed ISP, immediately severing service to my address to preserve domestic bandwidth sovereignty. Here's the thing about flagging satellite gear to federal authorities. When the owner happens to work for those same authorities, the report doesn't vanish into a suggestion box. It gets routed. It gets read. And in my case, it landed on the secured desk of my actual program manager, Colonel James Mitchell, U.S. Army, Ret. Currently detailed to a particularly shadowy corner of the DOD. My phone rang Thursday at 14:17. Blocked caller ID, 256-bit encrypted handshake. Tone the works. When I picked up, Mitchell didn't bother with hello, mate, he said, trying and failing to hide the laughter in his voice. Why is some suburban warlord trying to swat you with the FCC? He said, and I'm quoting verbatim, Mr. Brooks, are you aware that a concerned citizen has formally reported you're fully authorized, clearance-vetted DOD satellite terminal as a probable hostile foreign listening post? I could hear the grin cracking his voice in half. I told him I was painfully aware and asked if he'd like the entire paper trail of increasingly unhinged HOA citations I'd been stockpiling. He said, send it all, then added, and spell Sandra Kellerman's full name and street address for me, would you? What followed was a masterclass in weaponized federal bureaucracy, conducted in perfect for quarters time. 48 hours later, right in the middle of Sandra's Sacred Thursday Book Club tiny sandwiches, white wine, and passive-aggressive discussions of tasteful holiday decor, 2 matte black Suburbans with U.S. government plates glided to the curb in front of her McMansion. Mrs. Patterson, who treats her front window like a live theater, texted me blow by blow. 2 agents in charcoal suits, sunglasses still on even though it was overcast, knocked with the calm authority of men who are never told no. Sandra opened the door, balancing a 3-tiered tray of crustless cucumber sandwiches. They flashed credentials, asked if she was Sandra Marie Kellerman, and requested a word about her recent correspondence alleging espionage-grade activity at 47 Maple Grove Lane. The entire book club, 8 women and Lily Pulitzer, crowded the bay window as Sandra was questioned on her own porch for 1 hour and 53 minutes. The agents were polite, almost gentle, the way surgeons are gentle right before they open you up. They inquired about her methodology for detecting Russian transponders. They asked her to define intelligence node in technical terms. They were especially curious about the handsome letterhead she designed for the Bureau of Electromagnetic Safety, an agency that, upon 30 seconds of Googling, even the book club ladies now knew did not exist. When the agents finally left, Sandra looked like she'd aged a decade in an afternoon. That was only the overture. The next week, The real FCC called me personally actual engineers, not the complaint department, to confirm my terminal's licensing and apologize for the hassle. They were simultaneously opening a case against Sandra for filing fraudulent reports and willful interference with Part 25 licensed equipment. The State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division mailed her a thick envelope outlining the consequences of knowingly making false statements to law enforcement. Peak Communications Legal Department sent a certified cease and desist barring her from ever again implying she spoke for the company. One by one, every institution she had tried to hijack turned around and bit her. I decided it was time to go on offense. I scheduled a neighborhood internet and cybersecurity awareness seminar and spammed every mailbox in Pine Valley Estates. The flyer promised special guest speakers from the Department of Homeland Security and light refreshments. 47 residents showed up out of 60 households, including people who hadn't left their houses since the Clinton administration. Agent Rivera, a friend from a previous contract, flew in just for the occasion. He delivered a crisp, hour-long remarks on actual cyber threats versus the kind of fantasy scenarios usually accompanied by tinfoil hats. He closed with a slide titled Federal Penalties for Interference with Cleared Communications Infrastructure. That listed 18 USERC, 1,362 up to 10 years and 47 USERC, 333 willful interference with licensed spectrum. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. 46 heads swiveled toward Sandra's conspicuously empty chair. The regularly scheduled HOA meeting the following Tuesday was standing room only. I arrived with a briefcase, a laser pointer, and the serene confidence of a man holding for aces. Sandra was already at the head table, wearing a beige cardigan that looked like surrender made wearable. When a new business came up, I was recognized, plugged my laptop into the projector, and launched a 42-slide deck modestly titled, How Not to Commit Federal Felonies Over Your Neighbor's Wi-Fi. Slide 3, highlighted text of the ordered rule. Slide 7, FCC Advisory Bulletin. Slide 12, 4,000 still of Sandra dangling from my fence like a piñata. Princess the Yorkie staring in horror from the handbag. The room detonated in laughter. Someone yelled, Zoom in on the shoes. Slide 19. Legally obtained recording of Sandra explaining to a Peak Communications rep that my dish was broadcasting Marxist propaganda on the 19.2 GHz band. You could hear the poor rep wheezing, trying not to lose it on a recorded line. By slide 38 statutory penalties summary. You could have heard a gavel drop in the next county. I concluded with a motion. I move that we hold an immediate vote of no confidence in President Sandra Kellerman in light of her apparent exposure to serious federal charges and the reputational harm inflicted on our community. 3 immediate seconds. The charter required only a simple majority of those present. Paper ballots were distributed. Sandra stared straight ahead like a statue having a panic attack. The tally, 47-0. Even the treasurer who'd been her closest ally for 8 years marked remove. Sandra rose on unsteady legs, gathered her purse and her dignity, what little remained, and walked the green mile to the exit while someone's toddler announced at full volume, "The mean lady's in timeout forever." Nervous laughter rippled. Sandra paused at the door, turned, and croaked, "You people have no idea what you've done. This neighborhood will fall apart without standards." I stood and answered, "Standards are important, Sandra. So is staying out of federal prison." She opened her mouth, produced no sound, and left. The door closed with the soft finality of a judge's gavel. We never saw her at another meeting. 3 weeks later, word spread that Sandra had taken a part-time job at the Peak Communications call center. The same company she'd tried to commandeer was now paying her $19 an hour to say, "Thank you for calling Peak. This is Sandra. How may I assist you today?" On recorded lines. Rumor has Ithatholf the subdivision called in fake issues just to hear her greet them. 6 months after that, the FCC closed its file. No criminal referral, but a $15,000 civil penalty for filing false reports, and a permanent cease and desist order. When the certified envelope arrived, requiring her signature, Mrs. Patterson, still camped at her window, said the scream carried clean across the street and echoed off every vinyl-sided façade in Pine Valley Estates.